What if the biggest royal story of the year isn't being announced from a palace balcony, revealed in an official statement, or leaked through a trusted courtier, but is instead hiding inside the silence itself? Because right now, whispers are growing louder than facts, and those whispers all point toward one explosive possibility. Prince Harry may be preparing a far more urgent return to Britain than anyone expected, and this time Archie and Lilibet could be coming with him.
There's a phrase in politics and diplomacy that, you know, it's only really worth understanding weak political signals, because if anyone can read a strong political signal, right? But if you can read a weak political signal, that's a lot of what you do. And I am starting to feel my spidey senses tingling, you know, that there is something going on in terms of Harry coming back to the UK. We know he's coming back for the Invictus Games in July. I understand he could be in England for quite a bit longer than just the sort of one day that event requires.
The strange thing is that Buckingham Palace has not confirmed anything dramatic. No emergency summit, no family reunion, no breakthrough, nothing, yet the atmosphere surrounding the royal family suddenly feels different, heavier, more tense, almost as if everyone inside the institution knows something that has not reached the public yet. And when experienced royal observers begin reacting to signals instead of announcements, people pay attention, because these are the same observers who have spent decades learning how to read what the palace never says out loud. They watch the pauses, they watch the carefully chosen wording, they watch the details that seem insignificant until suddenly they become the entire story.
The Daily Telegraph actually had the most detailed briefing from within Harry and Meghan's camps. Harry has told friends in the US that he is excited for his children to reconnect with his grandfather, even though we know that there is no confirmation of that meeting. The source said, Harry says he's coming back before the end of the year with the children with the express intent to reunite.
And according to those whispers, Harry's upcoming return may not be another routine Invictus appearance. The speculation is becoming far more dramatic than that. Some believe he could remain in Britain much longer than expected. Others believe Meghan may travel too. And then there is the rumor creating the biggest shockwaves of all that Archie and Lilibet could finally be brought into the center of a family reunion everyone thought might never happen. Nobody is confirming it. Yet nobody is completely denying it either. That is where things become interesting. What changed? Why now? Why does this trip suddenly feel less like a scheduled visit and more like a race against the clock nobody wants to discuss publicly? Royal insiders know that major palace developments rarely arrive as thunderbolts. They arrive as patterns, tiny clues, strange timing, brief comments, mysterious shifts in tone. One source says something, another source repeats part of it, then suddenly a picture begins forming where previously there was only noise.
Time is something that you can never get back. And, you know, he regretted the time when his mother passed, the time he could not get back. And once again, he is falling into a position where he is losing out, and time is going to keep going. And, you know, it waits for no one. And it's going to be a huge regret for Harry. And I think it will cause him enormous stress and mental anguish once it is all done, because the time will be gone.
And right now, those pieces appear to be assembling faster than usual. What has actually been confirmed is relatively simple. Harry reportedly wants his children to reconnect with their grandfather. That message has surfaced repeatedly through multiple reports. The wording remains remarkably similar each time, suggesting the message is being carefully distributed. But what remains completely unknown is whether King Charles has agreed to anything. No official meeting has been confirmed, no schedule exists publicly, no palace representative has endorsed the reports. And that silence has become the center of the entire mystery, because the gap between Harry's apparent desire for reconnection and the palace's refusal to comment creates a vacuum. And vacuums in royal stories are dangerous. They attract speculation like magnets. What makes the situation even more fascinating is the way information keeps appearing. Not through one dramatic revelation, but through a calculated drip feed. A detail here, a comment there, a carefully placed report somewhere else.
No way can William or Catherine ever be around Meghan again, because let's say I don't like you and I have to be pleasant to you, but if you feel slighted because perhaps I'm not as effusive as you'd like me to be, then what are you going to do? Say I'm a racist? That will happen again, because in her mind, if we look at Meghan, in her mind, no one could possibly not love her. And so if Their cold to her must only be one.
The effect is powerful. Momentum builds without anyone taking responsibility for building it. Public sympathy grows while uncertainty remains intact. And perhaps that is exactly why the story has become so emotionally charged. Nobody wants to dismiss the possibility of a grandfather wanting to see his grandchildren. Nobody wants to sound cynical if time is genuinely becoming precious. Yet at the same time, many observers cannot ignore how carefully the narrative seems to be developing. Then comes the question that changes everything. If Archie and Lilibet really travel to Britain, what happens next? Because once those children arrive, the entire situation becomes infinitely more complicated. Britain's media will pay attention. Cameras will pay attention. Every movement will be watched. Every appearance analyzed. Every photograph debated. And photographs are never just photographs in royal life. They become symbols, messages, headlines, narratives, sometimes even business opportunities. The possibility of the children appearing anywhere near royal residences instantly transforms a private family matter into an international story. That reality cannot be ignored.
Charles has made it very clear that he wants Harry back. You know, we saw it in Harry's book, Don't Make My Life a Misery, but Don't Make My Final Years a Misery, boys. Charles's dearest wish is to be reconciled with his son. That is it. Charles is a massive romantic. He's like he's a real kind of like, he's very different to William. Like, William is completely Elizabeth II. Elizabeth is very kind of cold, frankly. She was cold about it.
Then there is another detail making experienced observers raise their eyebrows. Genuine emergencies tend to be messy. They happen quickly, plans get thrown together, decisions are made under pressure. What is emerging here appears much more controlled. Briefings seem coordinated. Messaging feels deliberate. The language being used appears carefully selected. That does not necessarily mean the urgency is fake, but it does suggest the urgency is being managed. And that distinction matters enormously, because underneath the public relations battle, underneath the headlines and speculation and competing narratives, there may be something much more human unfolding, something impossible to reduce to strategy. And that is where this story becomes far more emotional than political. Because while commentators continue arguing about strategy, security, media campaigns, and public perception, there may be a much simpler reality sitting underneath everything. A father who fears time is running out, a son haunted by regrets he already carries from the past, and two grandchildren caught in the middle of a family fracture that has stretched across continents and years.
Harry and Meghan basically are laying down the ground and running with a narrative in the hope that there's going to be a change. And there's not going to be a change of any significance. Yes, Harry will get some security. Every time Harry comes, if he gives notice, he gets security. That's not news.
According to multiple reports, Charles' deepest wish is not another state visit, another ceremony, or another constitutional victory. It is reconciliation. That single word hangs over every conversation surrounding this trip. Reconciliation. But here is where the story becomes complicated, because reconciliation means very different things depending on which side of the royal divide you happen to be standing on. For Charles, reconciliation may simply mean seeing his son and grandchildren again. For Harry, reconciliation may involve conditions, guarantees, and assurances. For William, reconciliation appears to be viewed through a far more cautious lens, and that difference creates a tension nobody inside the family seems able to escape. Royal observers have long argued that Charles leads with his heart while William leads with his head. Charles continues hoping relationships can be repaired. William appears far less willing to forget wounds he believes were deliberately inflicted. And suddenly, this rumored visit lands directly in the middle of that conflict. Harry understands his father's emotional vulnerability. Everyone does. The question is whether that vulnerability is becoming the driving force behind this entire situation. Because some commentators believe Harry's repeated attempts at reconciliation always seem to arrive with an attached list of expectations, security arrangements, family inclusion, advanced knowledge of who will attend, specific conditions that must be satisfied before anything moves forward. Supporters see that as reasonable protection. Critics see something else entirely. They see negotiation disguised as reconciliation. They see a pattern repeating itself over and over again. Harry never completely closes the door. Instead, the door remains open, but only if everyone agrees to enter on terms that protect his position. And whether fair or unfair, that perception has created enormous skepticism inside royal circles. Some insiders believe the greatest obstacle to a simple private visit is not security, protocol, or even William's reservations. They believe the real obstacle is the complicated web of expectations surrounding Harry and Meghan's public life, because genuine urgency usually produces direct action. A phone call, a flight, a visit. What the public is witnessing instead feels layered with negotiations, briefings, and carefully timed stories. That distinction has become impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, another development quietly exposed a deeper problem. While reports about Harry's possible return dominated discussion, Catherine's public appearance after her illness captured overwhelming public attention. Suddenly, the contrast became obvious. One story was built around speculation and possibility. The other was built around visible reality, and the public responded accordingly. Yet, despite all the debate, one question remains unanswered. What if this really is different? What if behind all the public relations battles, media strategies, and competing agendas, there truly is a son racing against a clock he can hear ticking louder every day? Because if Charles's health has forced the family to confront uncomfortable truths, then the urgency surrounding this visit may be entirely real regardless of how it is being presented publicly. And that brings us back to where this story began. Silence. Buckingham Palace continues saying very little. Harry's camp continues sending signals. Commentators continue debating motives. Nobody agrees on what happens next. Yet everyone seems to agree on one thing. Something feels different. Time and second chances. And somewhere behind palace walls, beyond the briefings and whispers, the clock keeps ticking. Nobody knows what decision Charles will make. Nobody knows whether Harry's journey will end in reconciliation or disappointment. But one thing is becoming impossible to ignore. The next move may change everything, or reveal that nothing has changed at all. And until that answer arrives, the silence surrounding this family may remain the loudest clue of all.